Now, once again, we do have some families here tonight that needed the sign language, so grateful to have Rose on the call today. All right, guys, let's start off the presentation. Now, once again, my name is Ed Zamora from Principia Prep, and today we're going to be going over the financial aid process, specifically understanding the college aid process, essentially in 2020, which is obviously a lot more difficult than it's ever been before. That being said, we do have Rose here helping out, graciously giving us her time, allowing those who need for the sign language to be able to understand the presentation. Once again, any questions you guys have, just ask the questions in the Q&A box down here. I will be going through it periodically just to make sure I'm answering your questions as we go through. That being said, let's begin. Now, today's presentation, we're going to go over the landscape of the college process, basically what's going on in the world of college today. Now, as I go through, I will be dropping the slides down every once in a while just to answer your questions, okay? For those who are wondering, Rose is just taking care of her dog, so she will be back in
I did the light.
Okay, good. All right, perfect. That being said, every time you see me take down the screen, it's because I'm getting anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 10 questions at a time. So I want to just look at them real quick and then jump back on. But that being said, today we're going to be discussing the landscape of both admissions, financial aid, and the whole gambit of SAT, ACT optional schools and kind of what's happening from a financial aid point of view. We will be talking about putting together a college list, the safety, target, and reach colleges, and how that affects both admissions and financial aid, as well as the different financial aid forms, the scams, the frauds, the things to avoid, as well as student loan options and resources. That being said, one thing that's been asked of me from basically every college we work with, or sorry, every high school I help out, is every year for the last, I would say 7 years, maybe 8 years, I've been asked by the guidance offices here today, as well as every other high school I help out, to put the videos on YouTube. So this year, my wife basically said, you're not doing anything, so start doing the videos, because you're driving the schools nuts, because every year you tell them you're going to do it, and then you don't end up doing it. So this year, we actually started the YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, you can just look me up. My name is Ed Zamora again. So on the screen there, you'll see there's up to almost 40 videos now so far. So of the 40 videos, we cover a lot of stuff you guys are probably dealing with right now, as far as scholarships, grants, financial aid forms, SAT, ACT optional, loan options. We talk about everything on the YouTube channel. So if you just go on YouTube, just look us up. You basically can just hit the subscribe button. The subscribe button will allow you to be notified when new videos come out. This week, we're doing a video on early action, early decision, and restricted early action. So we have 3 videos going up this week, specifically on the financial aid complexity of it, like how it affects the financial aid process, the way you apply for college. That being said, we also have now essentially the landscape of college. What many families don't realize is there's basically 3 different groups of college students. You have the worst group, which is group number 1, which is the college students that have just graduated college. They're in the worst group because they're going into an unfortunate scenario of huge unemployment, good, bad, or indifferent. Co-ops, internships are being canceled. Basic, I guess, starting level jobs are being canceled. Companies are going under, so on and so forth. So that's the worst part about it. The second worst part is in December and January, their student loans become available or become repayment options again. So they start repaying back their federal, state, and private loans, whatever one they have, starting in December. So in about 3 months, they go back into repayment, whether they have jobs or not. Then the second worst group is the students returning back to college, specifically the juniors and seniors, because they've experienced college before. They've never had experience like this before, where they're basically being told you're going to be going virtual. You might not be going into classrooms with people. You're being quarantined in some cases. Students are being expelled. Students are being suspended for not maintaining social distance. So it's a very strange environment from students, especially from a senior's perspective, where this was the last year, kind of like the last hurrah, and there is no last hurrah. That being said, the third group is the people I'm talking to tonight, the seniors and juniors in high school. You guys are actually in the best group, believe it or not. Of everything going on, you guys are in the best group. Let's talk seniors first. When it comes to senior students, the number one thing that's happening for you guys now, the best thing is happening for you, is that it eliminated the barrier of entry of the SATs and ACTs. The testing is now irrelevant. From Harvard down, they don't care if you send in test scores or not. This will probably be the only year that ever happens where Harvard is SAT, ACT optional. It's very unlikely it's going to happen next year. But if it does happen next year, it more likely means this is continuing what we're going through right now, which is probably something we all don't want, unfortunately. But that being said, another criteria for the seniors is the fact that there's going to be less competition on specifically the early decision 1, restricted early action, as well as the early decision 2 in some cases, mainly because of a few factors. Number 1, you're going to have almost no international student competition this year because of everything going on. Second, the fact that many students have not seen these colleges, so they're very unlikely to want to do early decision and be locked into a school they've never seen before. So early decision pool will probably be the lightest as far as a competition it's ever been. Now the regular pool, as far as the regular enrolling pools, are going to be enormous because so many students did not see schools. So if they're competing for high-level colleges, they're going to add more schools to their list, i.e. increasing their list across the board. Every student increases their list, more applications, more competition. That being said, for junior parents and below, what I would be doing right now is building my college list. And I'd be figuring out what colleges I want to apply to a year from now. Even if you're not 100% certain, any school you're even somewhat interested in, I would be putting on my list. And I would be calling their admissions offices and asking them, are you going to be SAT, ACT optional next academic year when I apply? You want to know these things because you never know who's going to stay on the SAT, ACT optional bandwagon, I guess you can call it. The reality is many schools will jump off, but not all of them. The fact that University System of California elected to go SAT, ACT optional forever going forward means there's going to be other schools who've done this that are going to keep going through with it. Maybe not for 1 year, maybe not for forever, but maybe 2-3 years going down the road, which would be a lot of help as far as the students in junior and sophomore year. That being said, let's talk about the one question I get asked by every family when it comes to admissions, and it's about the common application. On the common application, there is one question. It's a standard question that's asked by every college. It was not standard about 5 years ago, but it's standard now. If you look at the bottom of the page here, I actually took a screenshot of the computer screen here where it says the question. In the highlighted light blue section, it says, do you intend to apply for need-based financial aid? That basic question is essentially asking you, or what the way to look at the question, basically, the way it's asking you is, we will look at you financially as a component to be accepted to this college. That's typically what it means, this question. Now, since the question is standard, it's asked by every college, no one knows which school is and is not using your financial ability to pay for college as part of the acceptance of admissions. However, to find out, it's very simple. You, number 1, contact the admissions office and ask them this question. Is your school need aware? If the university says we are need aware, which typically used to be known as need blind, it basically means they are looking at you from a financial consideration to be accepted to this college. Now, if the school says no, then they don't care. If you can afford it, if you can't afford it, it does not matter. It's not part of the process. Now, if they do say yes, I always get parents asking me, should we say yes by checking off the box if we're applying for aid? And the answer for me is very simple. If you need financial assistance, you always check yes. Because the college is not going to send you a letter saying, we didn't accept you because your parents couldn't afford it. It's not the way this works. The way it works is if you do not get accepted, you're never going to know why you didn't get accepted. What happens is the letter of basically rejection says the same thing every year. It says record number of applications. Unfortunately, we don't have a spot. Thank you for applying. And that's it. So if you need help, you always apply for it. You always say yes. Because another thing that most families don't realize is there's more colleges than ever before that are putting in a certain criteria. If you check no for the first year that you're not applying for aid, some colleges are putting in a clause saying that if you don't apply for first year, we'll not give you aid for second year consideration either. So that means you're only going to get aid starting third year if you need help, which means if you're okay with locking yourself in for $70,000 or $80,000 a year, or essentially $160,000, it's up to you. But if you check no, there will be colleges that will stop you, bar you from applying for up to 2 years. That being said, let's talk about building the college list and essentially how you should be looking at it from both the admissions and financial aid perspective. Now, right at the top, from an admissions perspective, the way you build a list is you have three different criteria. You have the safety schools, which are essentially the guaranteed ins. Then you have the second level, which is the target schools, which for me are likelies. It's basically a 50-50 shot of getting in. You're not guaranteed, but you have a pretty good shot of getting in. The third level is the reach colleges. Now, the reach colleges are the more difficult schools to get into. Sometimes it needs more help, higher test scores, more rigor to your schedule, more community service, etc. That's the admissions way of looking at a list. Now, when it comes to financial aid, the financial aid is completely different in the sense that most students, from an admissions point of view, want to go to their target and reach schools. That's like the direction to go. From a financial aid perspective, it's backwards. The safety schools are actually the key when it comes to financial aid because of this reason. Most safety schools are essentially want your student bad enough, they're going to offer them scholarship money because they want to entice your kind of student, academically speaking, to come into the university. And the way they do that, is essentially the way they appeal to you by attracting you, is by offering scholarship money. So when you're building your list and you have your 1 to 3 different safety schools, your goal right at the bat, contact each one of the admissions offices of the safety schools. You can also do this with the target and reach schools, by the way. And you want to ask them, whoever picks the phone up, does your school offer merit-based scholarship funding? If they say yes, the next thing you want to say is, can I talk to an admissions counselor? The admissions counselor over the phone, you can ask them specific questions such as, my student has a 3.5 GPA out of a 4 scale. They have a 1300 SAT score. Are we eligible for scholarship money at your school? Yes or no? And over the phone, they can say yes or no, even before you apply. Because most colleges have an index. A GPA and SAT score line up, and that says to the college, this is how much scholarship money this student should be receiving at this university. Now, obviously, a lot of schools are taking out the SATs, which we will be talking about. I see a lot of you guys posting questions about the SATs. I have a slide just for that, so I'll get to that in a moment. If they say to you, yes, based on your academics, you are eligible for scholarship, you should always ask, how much do you think we would be able to get? Typically, they're not going to give you a specific amount. They're going to give you a range. So they'll say you're eligible for a trustee scholarship, which typically ranges from $8,000 to $12,000. The next question you always ask is, what's the next level? How do we get to the next level? Are we in a position to get to the next level? Such as if you say, I have a 3.2 out of a 4 GPA, and they say the next level requires a 3.5, it might not be possible. But if you have a 3.4 and they are allowing you to submit your senior grades, maybe it is possible. Your goal is, number one, in the entire world of financing when it comes to college, is always the same thing. The number one goal is always to lock in the most scholarship money possible. Because scholarship money is guaranteed 99% of the time for 4 years. It's the only portion of financial assistance that's guaranteed over 4 years. Nothing else is guaranteed. Grants are not guaranteed, the loans are not guaranteed, the work programs are not guaranteed, but the scholarships are. This is what you want to lock in. And when it comes to financial aid, what most families don't realize is the admissions office handles all scholarships. The financial aid office handles the grant money. So the financial aid office has nothing to do with scholarship money. That's why I say you're calling the admissions office. That being said, let's talk about one of the biggest, I guess, unfortunate scenarios that many students are falling into that I've seen over the last 10 years. Now, the biggest reason that college students are coming out of college with a lot of college debt is not just the fact that colleges are expensive, but it's the fact that many of these students are taking more than 4 years to graduate 4-year programs. It's statistically proven now that over the last 5 years, 30 to 50% of students are taking 5, in some cases 6+ years to graduate 4-year programs. The problem with that is this. In the world of college, there is no such thing as a 5-year scholarship for a 4-year program. There is no such thing as a 6-year grant for a 4-year program. So you need to get your student in and out of college within 4 years or less. And this slide here is going to show you how to do that. The first thing you need to do is write down the first line. Essentially just write down, my student needs to accomplish 120 plus credits to graduate. Now, the way college works is this. You're given a tuition bill, and your tuition bill for that year allows you to take 12 to 18 college credits per semester, and you're still paying the same bill. You should write that down. Whatever your bill is, you're allowed to take 12 to 18 college credits. There is no increase if you go above 12. The way it works is this though, line number 2. If your student takes the bare minimum 12 college credits per semester, every semester for 4 years, if you look at the end of line number 2, your students only accomplished 96 college credits. They're basically 30 credits short of graduating on time, i.e. 5-6 year scenario. Line number 3 is what you need to accomplish. Line number 3 indicates that your student will average 15 college credits per semester. If they average at the end of 4 years, they're at 120 credits. They can get in and out in the 4 years if they do that. So how do we make sure line 3 happens? Very simple. Every college has a FERPA form. F-E-R-P-A. It's an extremely important form. I have a video just on it. The FERPA form grants access to anyone that student wants. So what that means is if the student puts mom and dad's name on the FERPA form, that parent can call the college and ask them anything. Information about billing, information about academics. And by the way, when it comes to billing, the only reason the colleges provide you the billing information is as a courtesy. Legally, they're not supposed to give you anything as far as billing or academics if the FERPA form is not on file. Now, the reason you want the FERPA is for the academics, not so much for the financials. The reason being, if your name is on the FERPA form, you can call the school they're attending and ask them, how many college credits does my student have? How many college credits are they signed up for next semester? You can even ask their academic advisor, basically the person monitoring their whole file and making sure they're doing what they need to do class-wise. You can ask them, is my student going to class? This allows you to basically figure out everything going on without asking your student a single question. You don't ever have to ask them, how's school going? Because you already know. Now, the FERPA form is only done after you deposit at the college. So that's basically saying after you figured out which school you want to go to. The FERPA form is filled out or essentially gotten from the bursar's office, the billing office, or the records office. Typically in a college, it's always the same thing. It's just the department's named differently at every college. But bursar's, records office, or the billing office, that's where you get the FERPA done. That being said, let's talk about basically the last 6 questions that popped up. The SAT stuff. This is why I held off on your questions, guys, because we're going to get into the SAT stuff right here. On the screen here, you see a website called fairtest.org. At the bottom is the link for the exact homepage you see here. This website here provides you with all 1,600 plus SAT, ACT optional colleges. So this is the best place to go for seniors, juniors, and everybody in between if you're looking to see which schools are SAT, ACT optional. Now, when it comes to the SAT, ACT optional colleges, what many families don't realize is there was already 1,000 colleges on this list before the pandemic hit in March, or I guess took hold in March. So a majority of schools were already SAT, ACT optional that are now being looked at by students. It did increase obviously by 600 schools, so it did explode. But the reality is a lot of name brand schools were already on here. Quinnipiac, schools like George Washington, schools like American, even Wake Forest was SAT, ACT optional before this even started. And so was BU. So the reality is a lot of schools were already SAT optional at high levels. That being said, as seniors, if you are looking to go SAT, ACT optional, the first place I'm calling, once again, the admissions office. And I'm asking them, if we go SAT, ACT optional, will this be used against us for scholarship consideration? Now, before everything took hold in March, the 1,000 colleges that were SAT, ACT optional, 9 out of 10 of them did not care if you sent scores in for scholarship consideration. Obviously, with 600 schools or an increase of basically 60% to the list, there are going to be schools, unfortunately, that do want the SATs for scholarship consideration. Now, I'm thinking it's probably going to drop down to like 7 or 8 out of 10 schools scenario. So it's always best to call admissions and ask. For junior families and below, same situation for you guys. As you're building the list, if you're calling the admissions office and they say to you, yes, we're going to continue doing SAT, ACT optional, the next question should always be, will that be used against us for scholarship consideration? These are the key questions, phone calls you need to be making specifically with the admissions office to get scholarship clarification for you guys, okay? I see a lot of you guys raising your hands, which is fine, but raising your hands, I can't call on you. What I need you guys to do is just put the questions in the Q&A. That's what I need you guys to do, okay? That being said, let's talk about the college costs. Now, I've been in the world of college for 23 years. I've been doing this long enough to have seen recessions, booms, internet boom, housing bust, internet bust. I've seen everything, or at least I thought I saw everything until this year, obviously. That being said, this was the first year where I expected college costs to drop, and they did not. In fact, a handful of schools dropped the price, a handful of colleges kept the price the same, and about 95 of them increased the cost by 5 to 10%. Now, colleges on average increased prices from 3 to 5%. So some colleges basically tripled the increased percentage that they usually do. So good, bad, or indifferent, college costs will remain on the upward trend for a while going on. That being said, let's talk about the average college cost when you're talking about sticker price. The nationwide average for a public university, a state school, is between $14,000 to $30,000. Unfortunately, in the tri-state area, we're more expensive. Our starting price for state schools, or a range specifically, is $18,000 to $40,000. Our private universities in the tri-state area are also more expensive, unfortunately, starting at roughly $40,000 and going to $60,000. And then the unfortunate scenario of the elite colleges, as far as the higher level private universities, you're looking at colleges that cost in the 70 plus range across the board. In fact, 70 is now like the new normal when it comes to the private universities on the higher tier levels. That being said, as you can see on the screen, we have a few schools here that many students for the high school we're working with here that apply to these different colleges. And yes, a lot of the schools you're looking for on the higher level are now going to be in the 80 range. Making matters worse, as you can see from Columbia, for senior parents, Columbia will cost you guys around $85,000 plus because they will increase the price in May after you deposit and decide to go. Also, for junior parents, that means that Columbia will be one of the first colleges to exceed $90,000, believe it or not. Now, this is the cost for everything for 1 year, by the way. And this is also the slide I always show in the beginning, not so much to scare parents, but let's put it out there, the colleges are expensive. But the number one error I have seen in 23 years, and it happens every year, from an admissions point of view, is not applying to a college because of the fact that you thought it was too expensive. You have to do the homework before you figure out if it's too expensive, because sticker price does not mean that's what you're paying. These colleges on the screen here, more than half the students attending these specific colleges pay less than half this sticker price to attend the college. And by the way, the sticker price you're seeing here is including everything, room, board, books, the whole thing. That's why you never look at a college cost and determine whether you should take it off the list or keep it on the list. What you do first is the homework. And now let's talk about how you do the homework and figure out, are the colleges you're considering, are they generous or not? That being said, we have one question that popped up. Is merit and scholarship money the same? And the answer is yes. If a college says to you, you're merit aid eligible, they basically mean scholarship money. So merit aid and scholarship, just interchangeable words. Okay, that's why I usually say merit aid scholarship. So I just kind of combine them together, even though that's not really a term. But merit aid and scholarship money are the same exact thing. Now, that being said, let's talk about financial aid. Now, when it comes to financial aid, what most families don't realize is, or at least what I've noticed in 23 years of doing this, working at different colleges and everything else, is that there's two languages being spoken. And this is what I mean by two languages. You have the college financial aid admissions people language, then you have like the family language. And this is what I mean by the different languages. If you talk to any financial aid officer or any admissions officer or anyone from the college, and you say to them, can we get financial aid from your college? They're all going to say yes. I guarantee you, they're all going to say yes. I have no idea who you are out there, what the grades are, academics, income. I have no idea, but they're all going to say yes. And this is why. Financial aid, the term, means four things. It means scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. That basically means, in their eyes, if you're asking about financial aid, you're asking them, can I get a loan? To get a loan in college, you basically just need to be breathing. It's just that simple, to be honest with you. From a parent's point of view, from the family's perspective, when they say financial aid, you guys are thinking scholarships and grants. To make sure that you're still using the same language or basically able to converse with each other on your terms, this is what you need to say. When you're talking to anyone about financial aid from the college and the process or talking about the subject of financial aid comes up, you want to say, I only want to talk about the gift aid portion. That's it. Gift aid is the actual financial aid term for scholarships and grants. Gift aid does not include loans. It does not include work programs. So if you're talking about gift aid, it only allows them to talk about specifically the free money. That's how you deal with financial aid offices, admissions office, to make sure you're only talking about the free stuff. That being said, let's talk about how you qualify for grant money, the other side of the free stuff, because we just talked about the scholarship stuff. When it comes to grant money, this equation in front of you is how every single college determines if you're eligible or have space available specifically for grant money. The first two terms, cost of attendance and expected family contribution, those two on the screen, write them down. They're very important. Cost of attendance is essentially what a school costs, everything included for 1 year. I'll show you what goes into that in the next slide. The expected family contribution is essentially what they think you can pay for 1 academic year for 1 college student. I'll show you how they calculate that in a moment. So you take the college cost, total cost, subtract out what they think you can pay. What's left over is called the financial need. The financial need is what the school should help you with in scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. The reason I say should help you out is because of the fact that there's no rule saying they have to help you out at all. Now, throughout the presentation, I'm going to show you 2 ways to find out if your schools, your specific schools, each one of them, are generous or not. 2 specific ways, and I'll tell you when I say number 1, and this is the second one, so you'll know exactly when I tell you guys. That being said, let's talk about what incorporates cost of attendance and why you guys will be using the term cost of attendance going forward throughout this whole process. Cost of attendance takes into consideration everything. The room, board, and tuition, obviously the big cost, as well as books, laptops, pens, putting the dorm room together, new student fees, technology fees, heating fees, parking fees, lab fees, insurance fees. It covers the whole cost of the college for that 1 year. 2 reasons why you want to be using the term cost of attendance going forward. Number 1, because you obviously want to know what the total cost of this is going to be. Whether you're paying it directly to the college or not is still coming out of your pocket. And number 2, you need to know and you need to use the term cost of attendance if you're appealing or you're negotiating with the college for more money, because you always want to use the bigger cost. You don't want to negotiate just tuition. You want to negotiate the cost of attendance, the whole thing. That's why those are the 2 main reasons you will be using cost of attendance throughout the rest of the process. That being said, let's talk about the financial aid forms. Now, there's basically 2 different financial aid forms you'll be filling out. There's really 3, but I don't really count the third because the third happens at the end of the FAFSA form, which is one of the 2 forms we have here. The 2 forms here, the one on the left is called the FAFSA. Everyone fills out the FAFSA, no matter what. Some of you will have to fill out, in addition to the FAFSA, the form on the right called the CSS Profile form. The form on the left, the FAFSA form, is filled out by everyone. It doesn't matter what your accountant says, doesn't matter what the college advisor said, doesn't matter what your financial planner said, or your neighbor, or your brother-in-law, or your sister-in-law, etc., etc. You all fill out the FAFSA form no matter what. In 23 years of doing this, I have easily met 150, maybe even 200,000 families in my career. I do 85 high school presentations a year. I also worked at the colleges, so I've easily met hundreds of thousands of families. In my entire 23 years of doing this, I have told maybe 7 people not to do the FAFSA for very unique, specific reasons for 1 year only. And I'm talking about meeting families that have disability, Social Security, bankruptcy, foreclosure. I even had a family that had a negative tax return of $1 million negative, all the way up to families that have net worths of over $20 million. I've had them fill out the FAFSA. You do the FAFSA form as an insurance policy just in case. Because what many families don't realize is there's 3 deadlines in the world of financial aid. There's a school deadline, a state deadline, and a federal government deadline. If you wait until something bad happens, like a job loss or death or medical expense or something, to do the financial aid forms, and if you miss one of these 3 deadlines, it doesn't matter how bad your situation is, you've already lost financial aid. So even if you know you're not going to get any financial aid at all, you still fill out the forms as an insurance policy. Because I've worked in many financial aid offices, and every summer, a half dozen families walk in my office, and it's always the same story. We didn't fill it out because we thought we couldn't get anything, or we were told we're not going to get anything, at which point I have to tell them, I can't get you state aid. I can't get you school aid because you're 6 months late with the form. Just do the form no matter what your situation is. That being said, here is where you fill out the FAFSA form. The FAFSA form is filled out here at the bottom. You see the link there at FAFSA.ed.gov. This form is only filled out by senior parents. The form became available, actually all financial aid forms became available essentially starting October 1st. So from October 1st, for senior parents watching, from October 1st until January 1st, that's the regular and rolling deadline. If you're doing early decision 1, your deadline for early decision 1 candidates is you have to get the financial aid forms in by the early decision 1 deadline, which is typically November 1st. For students looking to do early action, and I mean any of the early actions, early action 1, early action 2, restricted early action, we also have a first choice out there, any of them, any of the non-binding, let's put it that way, any of the non-binding early stuff, you also have to get your forms in by November 15th at the latest. This year was the first year I've ever said this before. You guys are the third school that I've said this to, because this year schools are moving up their deadlines for early action financial aid forms. In 23 years, by the way, this has never happened. There's only one reason schools move up deadlines on financial aid forms. That's to make it that if anyone misses a deadline, they don't have to fully fund them. This is the year you do not want to miss deadlines, not admissions deadlines and definitely not financial aid deadlines, because schools are losing money left and right. They're going to find reasons if you're late not to fund you. You understand why as I go through the presentation, how many warnings I give you guys about this. That being said, for senior parents, you'll be using 2019 tax returns. For junior parents and below, you guys will be doing nothing this year. There are no financial aid forms for you guys to fill out. That being said, when it comes to the financial aid form, the FAFSA, you must obtain 2 logins. They're called FAFSA IDs. The 2 FAFSA IDs are used for, number 1, you get one for the student, and number 2, you get one for the parent. So one student ID is created, one parent ID is created. On the screen, you see, I actually created a YouTube video, a step-by-step guide, because I had so many questions coming in, of how to obtain the FAFSA IDs. If you go on there, step-by-step guide to obtain both the student and parent IDs. You must get 2 IDs. If you don't want to watch the video, perfectly fine. At the bottom of this slide is where you go to create the IDs. Create the IDs before you start the FAFSA form, okay? Now you needed 2 IDs for this reason. The first ID, the student's ID, logs you into the form so you can start it. The second ID does this. On the screen, you see where you get to the financial section. On the financial section, as you see at the bottom of the screen here, it says link to IRS. If you have, because you have to have, the parent's signature or parent's ID, if you click link to IRS, because you have the parent ID, it will allow you to upload your taxes directly from the IRS to the FAFSA form. But you can only upload it if you have the second ID for the parent. So the first ID, the student, signs in. The second ID, the parent, is to upload taxes. And then both IDs at the end of the form is to sign the form itself, okay? That being said, now when it comes to the FAFSA form, everyone always wants to know what counts, what doesn't count. Now when it comes to the FAFSA, let's start off by what doesn't count, because this is where the big errors happen. Number 1 error on the FAFSA form all the time is the primary home where you live. The equity in your home does not go on the FAFSA form. Second main error every year, financially speaking, is the retirement assets. Your 401ks, your 403bs, your IRAs, your Roths, your annuities, any retirement vehicle you have. The amount you have does not go on the FAFSA form. The second error happens because of this reason. The FAFSA does have one question about retirement, but that one question is asking, what did you contribute the year before? It is not asking you what you have. So you have to put down what you contributed last year, not your total amount. Now, when it comes to the FAFSA form, it does ask about college savings. When it comes to college savings, whether you have a 529, a basic plan, whether you have a UTMA, a UGMA, NJ Best, any of the college plans, they all now go in the parents section of the financial aid forms. That's the way you list them on the form. Before, they got split in different directions, but now they're all in the parent section. The only time you do not count a college savings plan is if it's not in the parent's name, like the uncle or aunt or grandparent own it. That's when you don't count the 529 money. Now, this question just popped up, and it pops up a lot. If you have 2 students going off to college, how do you fill out the FAFSA? Very simple. you have two FAFSA forms you fill out. Think of it this way. The FAFSA is student specific. So you have two kids going to college, you fill out two FAFSAs. As far as IDs, you have 3 IDs, one for the two students and one for the parent. The parent ID stays the same for both students. So you use the same parent ID for both students. That's the way you handle it, okay? Let me just read one more question here. For the parents asking about the multiple students in college, I do have a slide just for you guys coming up in a moment. Also for the parents who are asking about the change in income from 2019 to 2020, I have a slide on appealing just for you guys. So if your income did change from 19 to 20, I will be discussing that as well. Also, if you have a second property that does get counted on the financial aid forms, they do want to know about the equity in that second property. That being said, the things that do count are checking, savings, investments outside of retirement. That being said, when they ask you about the checking, savings, and assets outside retirement, they want to know the value as of the day you fill out the form. That's the way it works. That being said, let's go on to the expected family calculation. This here in front of you is actually how every college determines how much you should be paying towards a college, the minimum amount, by the way. This is called the basic equation, essentially, of the expected family contribution. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. And then if you guys have any questions, obviously, ask away. I am answering your questions, as you can see, throughout the slides here. That being said, I will give you, or I might as well give it to you now. There is a website you can go to calculate your number, which is a lot easier than writing this whole thing down. I just go through this so you guys understand how the equation works. If you guys go to collegeboard.org or collegeboard.com, either one really, because they own both websites. On College Board, they have an EFC calculator. The EFC calculator allows you to basically figure out what your expected family calculation number will be before you fill out any financial aid forms, which is something you should be doing. Now, that number they give you is a broad number that every college thinks you can pay at least this amount. That being said, start from the bottom and work our way up. Student assets, any assets or any money in the student's name that you put on the financial aid form, they will automatically take 20% of that asset, and that's going to be helping pay for college as part one of the 4-part equation. Part number 2, students' income. Students are allowed to make up to $6,500 before $1 counts. Any money over $6,500 your student makes, so for seniors, if your student had a tax return in 2019 and they made, let's say, $7,000, the IRS transfer will let you pull up to $7,000, or you can manually put it in. Of the $7,000 your student made, they will subtract the $6,500, the system will by itself, and the $500 remaining, they'll assess at a rate of 50%. So basically, any money your student makes over $6,500, they want half of it to go pay for college. Part number 3, parents' assets. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. The easiest way for me to explain this is this. Just write down $25,000 is your asset protection. So what does that mean? Now, right at the bat, remember for the FAFSA, your house does not count. Your retirement does not count. So let's say all the money you have in the world is $100,000 of checking, savings, investments, things outside of retirement. You put all that stuff on the FAFSA. What will happen is the FAFSA will subtract $25,000 for asset protection. That's the amount they're not counting towards paying for college. Of the $75,000 remaining, they'll assess that at a rate of 5.6%. So now you can start thinking about things you might want to do before you fill out the forms, because once again, it's the day you fill out the form for the valuations, which means obviously with the student's money counting a lot more than the parent's money, things you might want to do before forms get completed and submitted. Part number 4, parents' income. And by the way, when they ask for income for both student and parent, they're asking for adjusted gross income, line 8B on the 2019 taxes. For adjusted gross incomes, everyone always wants to know, are we paying 20%, 30, are we in the 40s? Think of it this way. If you are making an adjusted gross income of $50,000 to $200,000, this range, you're paying the 22%, which means at $200,000, you're paying $44,000 towards the cost of education. That being said, once you get to the 200,000 mark and you start going up, that's when the percentage starts going up to the 25, 30, 40, etc. That's the way it works. So the more you make, the more they expect you to pay towards the cost of education. That being said, the easiest way to calculate your number is not to do all this. I just do all this so you guys understand how the equation works. Easiest way to figure out your number is go onto College Board. It's the easiest way to do it, and just use their EFC calculators to figure out your situation, okay? Let me see here. Let me just go to the next page, sorry. For the parents asking about, well, let me answer two of the questions quickly here. For custodial counts, you're supposed to count the custodial count in the student's name. That being said, maybe you weren't paying attention and you by accident counted in the parent's name if you want to be as honest as possible. Wink, wink, so on and so forth. Once again, I'm being recorded. I can only go so far with this. The other question is being asked in the comment section here as well. I do have a slide for the parents that are separated or divorced and remarried. I do have a slide for you guys coming up in about 4 slides, so I will discuss your situation in total. That being said, let's talk about what's happening at the end of the FAFSA. Once you complete the FAFSA form, you're going to see this screen here. This is half the confirmation screen you will see when you do the FAFSA form. Obviously, I blanked out the student's name and everything else. But the important part here is the blue arrow on the left, where it says right next to it that the state of New Jersey requires you to answer additional questions. At the end of the FAFSA, if you have any state schools on your FAFSA, specifically New Jersey schools, because here we're doing this for New Jersey high school, the FAFSA form at the end will allow you to link up to the HESAA site, which is the Higher Education Authority of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey requires that you fill out a state form and the FAFSA to be eligible for state financial aid as well as federal financial aid. Remember, 3 people can give you aid here: school, state, and federal government, as I mentioned before. If you only do the FAFSA and you do not do the state part, you will not be funded by the state of New Jersey, even if you have need available for them to give you aid. Now, once again, do not miss deadlines. And I'm going to explain to you why you do not miss deadlines right here. What you see on the screen is a snapshot, a screenshot basically, from a HESAA, from a student that sent me their portal, their information, to show me what's going on with HESAA. As you can see here, it says COVID notice. Now, it's really nothing to do with COVID as far as a medical situation. What it's showing me here, though, if you read through it, I'll explain it to you now, is that the state of New Jersey, for this year's class, 2020-2021 academic class, is guaranteeing them they're going to give them their fall money that they're eligible for. It is not guaranteeing them the spring money, because the state of New Jersey, they don't have the budget this year because of COVID to be able to say they're going to 100% pay for every student's money. They have grant money in the spring. In 23 years of doing this, I've never seen this notice. Never. Not through the housing recession, not through the banking situations, not through crashes, not through the NASDAQ crash. Never have I seen a notice like this from the state of New Jersey, which means they're going to be looking for reasons not to fund you. So once again, do not miss deadlines. If you need to, you can fill out the financial aid forms before your student even applies to the colleges. Just get the forms in. That being said, let's talk about the third form, or I guess basically the second form you guys will be filling out when it comes to the financial aid forms. It's called the CSS Profile form. Now, the CSS Profile form, once again, is the second form that's required by some colleges, not all of them. FAFSA, everyone fills out. CSS, some families fill out. Now, I have the home page of College Board on here because College Board is where you go to fill out the CSS Profile. And there's a few reasons I'm using the home page rather than going straight to the CSS Profile part of the home page. Number one, when you go on here to the home page of College Board, where you see the young lady there, right above her, there's a bunch of links, which starts off where it says get started, find college, etc. You go over to where it says pay for college. Where it says pay for college, you can click on that. It'll give you 2 options, or actually 3 options. But 2 of the 3 options, number 1 option is it'll show you which colleges need the CSS profile, because not all of them need this form to be filled out. To give you an example, there are 80 plus colleges in New Jersey. Only 1 college in all of New Jersey requires the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and the state form. And that's Stevens Institute of Technology, the only one that requires a CSS. Also, where it says pay for college is where you can click the link to start the CSS profile form. Now, when you're doing the CSS profile form, you log in using your student's SAT account information. So there is no parent login for this one. Now, the CSS profile form, right above where it says pay for college, there's a search bar. If you type in any school's name and press search, They'll pop up a bunch of links, and the links will allow you to see what's known as the college's profile, basically explaining everything about that university. Part of that profile will allow you to look into the college's financial aid resources and how they distribute financial aid. By the way, that's one of the 2 ways I'll tell you guys of how to find out if your college is generous. I'm going to go more in detail on that in a moment, but this is why I wanted to show you this entire page. That being said, when you're filling out the CSS profile, what does it count? Well, it basically counts everything. The CSS profile wants to know about your primary home, wants to know when you bought it, how much you bought it for, how much you owe on it, how much equity you have in there, how much you think it's worth. It goes very in depth when it comes to your primary home. It also wants to know about retirement assets. It will even ask, in some cases, what kind of car you drive, what kind of car your student drive. It gets very in depth. Both forms, FAFSA and CSS, by the way, have save buttons. So if you get overwhelmed, hit the save button. Do not rush through these forms. The FAFSA form, if you make an error, you can go back in, change it a dozen times. It doesn't matter. The CSS profile, if you make an error on the CSS profile, you cannot make changes. It's locked, unfortunately. It makes it more difficult. You have to call each school, ask them how they want to change it. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So it's easier if you just take your time. Now, I have like 3 parents asking me already. So yes, I do help out with the financial aid forms. So if you need help with the financial aid forms, I do help parents. Once again, I have my contact information at the end of the presentation. You guys can just shoot me over a call, text, whatever it may be, and I do help you guys out with the forms. Other than those changes, there are other big changes too, or other big differences, sorry. The FAFSA form is 90 to 100 questions, so somewhat standard. The CSS profile is 400 starting questions, which can go up from there depending on which colleges require this form, because at the end of the CSS, every college gets to ask you more questions. That being said, let's talk about, let me just answer a couple of your questions here, guys. So I have a bunch of questions just popped up, and then we'll jump back on here with a net price calculator. Good question. Can you get scholarship money without doing the FAFSA? And the answer is yes. The colleges will not use the FAFSA for scholarship consideration, so that's not an issue. Unfortunately, guys, I have a few questions here asking about specific assets. I cannot answer specific questions for you guys. If you as far as assets you have and how they're affecting you. CSS stands for, somebody just asked that, College Scholarship Search, okay? I'm just answering your questions right down the line here, guys. I'm gonna answer a couple more. I think I have like 3 more because the rest of them are already answered, and then we'll jump on here. Good question. If you have an LLC or an S Corp and you have rental property in the LLC or S Corp, do you have to count the rental property? And the answer is yes. It does not matter for the financial aid forms how you put your rental properties into businesses. I know a lot of people, or I haven't mentioned it, but if you have a business, on the FAFSA form, it indicates that if you have a business that has less than 100 employees, you do not count the value of the business. It does not work that way for real estate. Everyone thinks this is a loophole. This is not a loophole. This is just, if anyone told you this is a loophole, they have no idea what they're talking about. I hear this every year. What happens is if you have property in an LLC or an S Corp or any kind of partnership or K1 stuff, 1099s, etc., the rental property still counts if you have a pass-through. If you touch the rental income in any way, if you're getting a loss or a gain, it does count. The FAFSA does count rental properties no matter how you try to disguise or hide, whatever you want to call it, in taxes. It does count, unfortunately. That being said, I'm going to answer 2 more questions, guys, because some of the questions you're asking I'm going to be going through anyways. Once again, scholarship money does not need the FAFSA to be completed. Okay, we answered that. Good question. You do not need to fill out the state form if your student is not staying in the state of New Jersey. So if they have no New Jersey schools, you don't have to do the state form. However, I would still do the form just in case. I've dealt with teenagers for 23 years. As parents, you probably know this too. They change their minds all the time. So I'd rather have the benefit of having the form done and changing the school rather than missing the deadline. That being said, let's talk about the net price calculators, which are the first of the 2 ways you will find out if every one of your colleges are generous or not. Basically the homework you can do. What you can do to find out the net price calculators is very simple. Google the name of your school, whatever name it is, and the term net price calculator at the end. And it'll pop up in the first 3 links, that school's net price calculator. So what is the net price calculator? Very simple. Think of it this way. The expected family calculation is a broad number. It's used by every college saying this is the amount you're expected to pay, the minimum amount. The net price calculator is different. It's direct. It says for this college specifically, this net price calculator is saying you can pay this amount. So think of the net price calculator as every school is going to be different because every school costs different and every school's generosity is also different. To give you an example, the reason I have College Board on here is because if you Google Rider or Google Northeastern or Google Harvard net price calculator, all their net price calculators are on the College Board site. That being said, I actually did a net price calculator to show you guys specifically how they work. Here we have Harvard's net price calculator. I did Harvard because everyone knows Harvard. I'll explain to you why in a moment why Harvard doesn't matter that I did theirs. But that being said, the first thing I like about almost every net price calculator is on the left, you see here that the school provides their cost of attendance. By law, by the way, they need to provide you or should provide you their cost of attendance showing the total breakdown of cost, tuition, room board, books, etc. That being said, I plugged into the equation for Harvard a family of 4 with 1 student going off to college, with the parents having an income of $100,000 and having $50,000 in savings. That being said, it came back and said that Harvard's going to give us $64,000 plus in grant money. I know it says scholarships, but Harvard doesn't do scholarships. They do grants. It's just a terminology thing. That being said, that means that you are paying less than $12,000, basically $11,950 to attend Harvard. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, that's great, Ed. Of the 160 or so people here, not all of us are going to Harvard. And I say to that, it doesn't matter. Because the reality is every school now almost has a net price calculator. Almost all of them. I would say about 95% of them have a net price calculator. And of those schools, Rider, Fairleigh Dickinson, Ithaca, Loyola, Tulane, Case Western, Northeastern, BU, all the liberal arts schools are just this generous, are almost exactly as generous as Harvard. So you don't have to be looking at just the Ivy League schools to find yourself a generous college. There are dozens upon dozens, if not hundreds of colleges out there that are as close to or as generous as Harvard. And the way to find that out, number one way to find out if your school is generous, do their net price calculator. That being said, let's talk about a couple of your questions have been popping up about this. When it comes to the marital status on the financial aid forms, let's first talk about the FAFSA form. On the FAFSA, it's going to ask for parents' marital status, and there's 6 answers, by the way, okay? Answer number 1, married, remarried, same answer. Answer number 2, divorced or separated, same answer. Answer number 3, widowed. Answer number 4, not married. Answer number 5, not married but living together. And then answer number 6, unable to provide parents' information. If you indicate on the FAFSA that the parents are divorced or separated, another question pops up. The other question is going to ask, which parent does the student live with 51% of the time or more? Once you indicate that student lives with mom a majority of the time, all dad's questions for his income and assets are erased. They're not asked of you. So that means if you're divorced or separated, that means they will not count one of the parents' finances based on the fact that you are separated. Now, separation must be at least 3 months long. For those parents that are sitting there wondering, staring at each other, maybe this is not a great scenario, maybe we should split up kind of scenario. It's got to be at least 3 months of separation. That being said, the way it works is this. If you're filing taxes together, it's perfectly fine. And this is what makes it complicated. You can still file married filing jointly on your taxes and be separated on financial aid forms. This is the weird gray area of financial aid. However, if you're filing taxes jointly, you have to show either a rental statement, a utility bill, or a driver's license showing a different address for one of the two of you, for it to be okay or just kosher in the world of financial aid for them to accept it. That being said, if you're remarried, unfortunately, the step-parent takes the place of the biological parent, which means step-moms, step-dads, whether you've been married a day or 100 years, whatever you want to call it, and everything in between, your finances do go on the FAFSA form. Whether you adopted the student or not is irrelevant. They go on there. That being said, that's FAFSA. Let's talk CSS Profile Form. On the CSS Profile Form, it's school specific, which means when it comes to the CSS Profile Form, some schools will say to you, we do not need the non-custodial parents' information. Other schools will say, we do need the non-custodial parents' information. What you can do is just contact the school's financial aid office and ask them, do you require the CSS? If yes, I am divorced. Do you require the non-custodial parent to fill it out too? If they say yes, if they need both of you, that means you're each filling out a CSS profile. So 400 questions each. On top of that, if you're remarried, both of you, that means all 4 parents' financial information goes on the form. Good, bad, or indifferent, unfortunately. That being said, let's talk about multiple students in school. Another question here, obviously that popped up. I have about 4 or 5 people here with twins here. When it comes to the college financial situation, having multiple students in school is actually a tremendous benefit because it provides more space for aid. Your goal is always to provide the college with space to be able to get financial assistance. Whether the college gives you aid or not, it's up to the school, but your goal is always to give them space to be able to provide financial aid consideration. That being said, here's an example. We have one student going off to college. Let's say that college costs $35,000 a year to attend, okay? I'm just using even numbers, by the way. And by the way, the students do not need to go to the same college for this to work. Student 1 goes off to college, costs $35,000. You fill out all the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms say you can pay $20,000, which means you have $15,000 of space for financial aid consideration, for them to give you financial aid to help out with your situation. Then you have another student coming in. Maybe you have twins, like a bunch of you guys asked me about the twins. So you have both of them going at the same time. And once again, you're looking at 2 colleges, so $35,000 a piece. I'm just using even numbers, guys, just to make the math easy if you're wondering. So we have $70,000 in total cost for 2 students going to school. And you fill out the forms again. And once again, the forms say you can pay $20,000 for this educational cost. However, that $20,000 is divided between the 2 of them. So student 1 went from having only $15,000 of financial aid space to $25,000 of financial aid space because of the fact that they have a sibling now in school. That basically says to them, whatever I'm supposed to pay for one student, it's divided between 2 of them, then providing more space for financial aid consideration. I have seen families that have incomes of $400,000, $500,000, receive tens of thousands of dollars of free grant money, financial aid assistance, because of the fact that they have multiple students overlapping in college at the same time. The golden ticket here is typically triplets, to be honest with you. Those families make unbelievable amount of financial aid assistance available because of the fact that 3 going in at the same time. Or if somehow you have 3 going in at some point in time, there's a lot of space there for aid. So students overlapping in college is actually very beneficial. That being said, before I get into the errors, I see you guys have just been popping up a bunch of questions, so I'm going to jump on the questions real quick. Just give me 1 second here. For the person asking me about the students, the 529 being in the student's name, give me an email, or send me an email, or shoot me a call tomorrow, because typically most 529s are not in the student's name. I think you might be thinking about a UTMA or UGMA, and I can kind of explain to you in further detail. Okay. If you guys, once again, guys, for the financial aid forms, the FAFSA does not count retirement assets, whether it's a Roth, an IRA, or 401k. Those do not count on the FAFSA form. They do count on the CSS Profile form, unfortunately, though. If your taxes are delayed, good question. Your goal, if your taxes are delayed, is to fill out the financial aid forms if you need to, based on a certain deadline. Fill them out manually and fill them out before the deadline or by the deadline of early decision, early action if you need to. Once again, this year is the first year I have ever seen colleges ask for financial aid forms in November that are not specifically for early decision, which is the binding one of the early admissions processes, which means to me that the only reason the college would be asking for forms this early is not to benefit the family. It's to benefit the college to allow them an out to not fund everyone the entirety that they typically do in the past. There's no other reason they move up dates but that. Okay. Okay, let me see here. Oh, if parents have 50-50 split, of the student. How would I address the financial aid forms? Very simple. Choose the parent who has the least income. Always choose the parent who has a lesser income, because the income is the number one factor when it comes to establishing how much you need to pay for college. Okay, we discussed that. For those asking about scholarships, I do have 2 websites at the end. I will give you guys the 2 websites at the end. Question about international students. Can you guys fill out the financial aid forms? And the answer is yes and no. For the students, to fill out a financial aid form, by the way, you must have either not a social, well, you need a social, but to fill out a financial aid form, you need to have U.S. citizenship or be a permanent resident or be in the process of getting permanent residency. If you don't have either one and you are graduating from a high school in New Jersey, you can still apply for aid, but you have to fill out what's known as the HESAA's FAFSA alternative form. If you have questions, email me. I'll just shoot you the link for the alternative form, or I can even just answer your questions. But obviously, I'm not in a live setting like I usually am for you guys, and I can ask you more questions, but just email me. But those are the 2 ways of looking at it from an international student point of view. Good question. If you are looking at ROTC programs, what will typically happen is any aid you have will be offset. To give an example, in some cases, the ROTC programs pay for everything. So if you get ROTC and it pays for everything, you cannot get a scholarship for the college to pay you $25,000 because you're academically a strong candidate. The college is not going to give your student 25 grand to go there if ROTC is covering it. So you can only get up to the cost of the college regardless of your financial situation. Once again, I touched on the divorce thing. When it comes to scholarships, there's a question about scholarships. When it comes to scholarships, you guys have to maintain typically a B average to get this, to keep the scholarships in college. That's like the level. Okay. Okay, guys, I will be discussing that. All right, guys, let's go back to the presentation here. And let me talk about the frequently made errors. There's 4 made errors every year. Obviously, you see more on there, but the top 4 errors are always the same. First name, last name, social, and birthday. First name, you do not use nicknames. So if your name is Edward on your social security card, you do not put Ed or Eddie on the financial aid forms. Second error, the last name. If you do not know your last name, now you probably think I'm out of my mind by saying if you don't know your last name, even the interpreter is laughing at this, but the reality is, this is what happens. I see about 3,000 families a year, by the way. So I see a lot of families. If you are remarried, you have to check if you changed your last name, did you legally change your last name on your social security card? This happens often. Parents come to my office, do financial aid forms, and they don't know their last name, so you can't do any financial aid forms. Also, was your student adopted? If they were adopted, did they legally change their name on the social security card? These things all have to add up the way they look on your social. Number 3 error, the social. When it comes to the social, the error when it comes to the social is obviously number 1, putting the wrong social on the financial aid forms. Check the socials before you put them on there. If you're not certain about them, double check. Also with the socials, on the admissions paperwork, most admissions paperwork says the social security number is optional. It is not optional. I don't know why they put this on there. The way they link up your admissions paperwork, by the way, and your financial aid paperwork is your social security number. That's how those things are linked up. So yes, you always put your social on the admissions paperwork. Unless you don't have a social, then you can just skip it. But if you do, put the social on. The 4th is the birthday. If you do not know your spouse's birthday, they don't know your birthday. If your students don't know your birthday, just ask the questions. If somebody's going to be annoyed, they're going to be annoyed. It is what it is, but you cannot get the birthday wrong on these forms. It's the biggest error. The 2 biggest errors, the biggest errors to screw up everything and make you have to do the forms again is the birthday and the social. If you get those 2 wrong, they cannot be corrected. You must do the form again, over again, unfortunately, from scratch, okay? That being said, let's talk landmines from a social media point of view. Admissions specifically. When it comes to the admissions offices, I have a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends, so on and so forth, associates. They work in they work in the admissions office that have told me they do go on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all the stuff they have out there nowadays. And they're checking to see what students are posting. And they're not checking to like your picture. They're not checking to follow your teenage daughter or student or son. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're going on there to reject your student. There's only one reason an admissions officer goes on a student's account social media wise. And that's the reason, is to look for reasons to reject you. So to cover your students, to make it that nothing happens, and maybe they post something or share something or like something that they thought was funny and offends somebody, make their accounts private. Make all their social media accounts private. Their social media accounts should be private from today until you drop them off at the college. Now that might seem severe, but let me explain to you why. Every 3 years or so, there's about 10, 15, 20 students. It happens every 3 years. For some reason, it's just every 3 years. That you hear in the news that 20 students were going to Harvard, then they shared something, and those 20 students now are not going to Harvard. This happens every year. It's not just Harvard. It's also a bunch of other schools too. So if you want to protect your child, make them make their social media pages private until you drop them off. Once you drop them off, then they can post all the nonsense they want. Doesn't matter anymore. But until they get dropped off, do not allow them to keep it public, especially if they're posting just ridiculous stuff that you don't find funny or anything in between. Because they can be rejected, not just from the beginning stages before they get accepted, they can also have their acceptance rescinded a month, 2 months, 3 months after they get accepted. So social media is a big deal when it comes to admissions. That being said, let's talk about scams. This year I saw an explosion of scams. I mean, explosion in a way I've never seen in 23 years of how many scams out there that are now popping up. In front of you, what you see here is an enormously beneficial, great read that you should be reading. It's from the U.S. Department of Education. It's at the bottom, is a link down there, studentaid.gov/resources/scams. It's a great 20-minute read that explains different scams, scholarship scams, billing scams, financial aid scams, loan scams. It's a great read. This year, one of the biggest scams I saw, we actually posted on our Facebook page. I think we got like 200 share or 2,000 shares because it was so prevalent. There was an email going around that was pretending to be Rutgers. And it was just sent to everyone. The students that had Rutgers, students that were not in Rutgers, everyone was receiving this email. I got about a dozen families email this to me. And the scam email was being sent out on Friday. And by the way, they always send out the scam stuff on Friday because they want to make sure you can't call the school to find out what's going on. The email basically said, and the email, by the way, looked just like a Rutgers email. It was like dead on. The scam basically said, by the second sentence, it said, if you do not send us your banking routing information, we will kick your student out because you guys have a bill. Now, instantly, within 10 seconds, I knew it was a scam. Reason being is I've worked in college. I've worked in the colleges. I worked with the billing offices. I know that they will never send an email like this. Not county and not everything in between from county to Harvard. None of them will ever send you an email saying, give us your routing information or your credit card information, or we're kicking your student out, even in polite conversational talk. Because colleges don't do that. Colleges are passive aggressive. They do not mail you, or email you, or phone calls or anything. They just send a list of students. A list of students is sent to every professor right around the beginning of October. That list basically has a list of students that says at the top of the list, ask the student to leave the class immediately and go talk to financial aid. Until that professor gets another list, that student is not allowed back in the class. What they'll also do is deactivate their dorm key. They'll deactivate their food key. So they can't go back to their dorm room. They can't eat until the bill is resolved. That's the way the colleges handle this. Now, unfortunately, some students and some parents, I'm pretty sure, were scammed and paid it, or sent the routing information and lost money. But thankfully, I was able to get ahead of it, and I told a lot of parents that had basically sent it to me, do not pay it, do not send anything. Even before I got to get a hold of somebody at Rutgers, I knew, because I knew it was a scam. But that being said, we also did, or I guess I did, a 20-minute video on scams as well. So if you want to kind of avoid the scam situation, either watch our video on YouTube or just read this. It's great information. That being said, here is the second way to find out if your college is generous or not. First way, net price calculator. Second way is this. On the screen here, you see the Cornell slide. I've been doing this slide now for 20 plus years because Cornell's always been very generous. Now, once again, the name doesn't matter and you understand why, but I use Cornell forever, so it's always going to be at Cornell for at least the near future. Cornell costs $79,443. Let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms, and the financial aid forms say you can pay $10,000, which means you have a financial need of $69,443 to attend Cornell. Cornell meets 100% of need, which means Cornell is essentially going to provide all the financial assistance you need outside of what the financial aid forms say you can pay. So how do I know that Cornell's meets 100% of need? Or I guess how would you know? I already know already. You go on to College Board. On College Board, you type in the search bar any school's name. And any school's name you pop up, there's a financial aid section in their profile. On that profile, the financial aid section is going to show you the first number of 3. First number is going to show you is how much financial need this college meets. The percentage. Does it meet 80% of my need, 90, 100% of my need? The second number is going to show you, which is also very important, is how much of that need is going to be gift aid. So, like I mentioned before, gift aid, very important term to understand and know, because it means the free financial aid stuff. And the third number, the easiest one to read for everybody, is how much this school meets on financial aid for every incoming freshman on average. So the way you find out if your college is generous, net price calculator, and number 2, College Board's profile. Now, once again, the name of the school is not important here because Haverford, Oberlin, Pomona, Harvey Mudd, Ryder, Fairleigh Dickinson, Seton Hall, all these schools fall into the generous category of schools that provide an unbelievable amount of financial aid assistance on the free side. So it doesn't have to be the Cornell, Harvard level to get a lot of help here. Now, what happens after you get accepted to the college? Well, within 2 weeks, as long as you did the financial aid forms early, you guys start receiving these. These are called the financial aid award letters. Now, the financial aid award letters are essentially the college saying to you, if you attend our college, or essentially if you come here, here's the scholarships, the grants, the loans, and the work programs we will give you for attending our college. This also begins the negotiation portion of this. Now, we did a video that's 25 minutes long, I believe, on appealing financial aid letters for a reason. One thing that drives me nuts in 23 years of doing this is when I hear parents being told by whoever that you always appeal a financial aid letter. You do not always appeal a financial aid letter. If somebody says to you, they have no idea what they're talking about, because there's 2 types of appeals when it comes to appealing financial assistance from a college. Number 1 level is the admissions level. Now, yes, you always appeal a scholarship. Let me explain that one first, and I'll go into the second level, which is the financial aid office appeal for grant money. This is the way it works. School A, where your student really wants to go, has offered you a $10,000 scholarship. School B, which is equivalent to School A, or even in some cases your safety school, the ones that give you more money, has offered you, let's say, a $20,000 scholarship. You go back to School A and say, thank you for the $10,000, but is there any way you can match the number for School B here? Now, you say it that way exactly. Is there any way you can match the number? That's a specific sentence you need to use. 3 things happen. Number 1, they match the number, we're done. Number 2, they come back and say to you, we can't match the 20,000, but we can meet you in the middle at 15,000. What do you think? At which point you come back and say, thank you for the 15,000, but can you meet us in the middle at 17.5? So you never, when negotiating, give them a number. You wait for them to come back, okay? Third thing that happens, they just say, no, we're not gonna negotiate. Now, when you appeal financial aid, as far as the financial aid department with grant money, 3 things happen. Number 1, they give you more money. Good scenario. Number 2, they don't give you more money. Not a good scenario. Number 3, they take away all your financial aid they've given you in grants, which can happen. This is what most families or most people that tell you you always appeal no matter what do not understand how the system actually works. Because this is how financial aid actually works. You fill out all your financial aid forms, and it goes to a giant computer that calculates all your information within a second, even faster than a second. That giant computer takes that information and sends it to the college. The college has their own giant computer that then figures out your financial aid award letter. So no one's ever putting together your award letter. It's done by a giant machine. The giant machine, if it doesn't see anything it's been plugged in to the system to look for, any big red flags or errors, it just lets it go through and you're done. When you ask for an appeal, when you ask to negotiate, you're bringing in a human being. If you're negotiating this grant money specifically, the human being is going to ask for 2 years of taxes. The machine is not going to ask for 2 years of taxes, but the human being does. They're going to know for seniors, 2019 taxes they want from you, and they want 2020 taxes from you. Which means if in any of those 2 years, they see something that you forgot or omitted or just didn't put on the form for whatever reason, you can lose grant money. So let's just say in 2019, you decided that you were going to sell your house. And in 2020, it sold and you had a great capital gain. And you forgot to write on the financial aid forms that you have money from the sale of the home or second property. They're going to see you have a capital gain, i.e. they're going to ask, where are these assets if you forgot to put them on the financial aid forms, i.e. you can lose grant money. If you have dividends, if you have capital gains, if you have rental property, all these things are red flags for a financial aid office. And if you don't know what you're doing, easiest thing to do if you want to appeal, just watch the video. It's 25 minutes long for a reason. I go through everything the financial aid office is looking at and how they look at it, when to appeal, when not to appeal. It's a very easy 25-minute thing you can watch if you want to appeal. Now, standard speaking, for this academic year, 2021, if your 2019 taxes have a drop of 20% or more for 2020 taxes, then almost across the board, I am definitely appealing for more grant money. Now, you have to factor in if you're getting unemployment, severance, and these things too to make sure you're in that 20% range, okay? Because once again, when you bring a human being in, they can take away money just as easily as they can give you money. But if you have a 20% drop of income or more, I'm almost 100% of the time going to appeal and ask for more assistance. That being said, let's talk about loans. When it comes to loans, there's 3 different types of loans out there. There's federal loans, state loans, and private loans. The first loan, the federal loan, you're all going to get accustomed to hearing because once you fill out the FAFSA form, every student's offered a $5,500 federal loan. It's called a federal entitlement. It must be offered, but they don't have to take it. That's why every financial aid office knows if you ask, can I get financial aid? The answer is always yes. Just fill out the FAFSA, we'll give you a loan. That being said, the $5,500 federal loan is in your student's name. It's paid back 6 months after they graduate over a 10 to 20 year term of repayment. That being said, the second federal loan you're all going to get accustomed to hearing is called the Parent Plus loan. The Parent Plus loan I like because it's got the lowest credit requirement. If you have a credit score of around 610, 620, you can obtain the Parent Plus loan. The reason I don't like the Parent Plus loan, and by the way, the Parent Plus loan lets you take out as much as you need. The reason I don't like the Parent Plus loan, it has a 5.3% fixed rate, which is very high for the environment we find ourselves in now as far as interest rates. Second reason I don't like the Parent Plus loan is because of the fact it's got a 4.25% origination fee. That means for every $10,000 you take out, you must pay them $425. So if you're looking at like a $50,000 loan, you're basically paying somewhere around $2,300 in fees for a loan at a 5.3% rate, which is pretty bad. That being said, the second level is the state loans. Here in the state of New Jersey, we have what's known as the NJ class loan. The NJ class loan, the rates are in the 4s, so not great, but not bad. Definitely better than the federal. Also, problem with the NJ class loan, they do have an origination fee, so they are charging fees. Now for the parent loan's only in the parent's name. You can't put the student on it. The New Jersey loans or the state loans, you can put the student on the loan as the borrower and have the parent as the cosigner. Now the third level is the private lenders. The private lenders this year are the best. They were the best last year. They'll be the best as far as interest rates for 2 more years moving forward. When it comes to the private lenders, the Sallie Maes, the Nailnets, the Discovers, all of them, their rates are starting at 1.24. There is no one better than the private lenders right now. If you need help for loans for senior parents, what you can do is just email me because every June I have a list. I just put together a list of the top 5 lenders based on interest and terms. And anyone who emails me, I just send it to you guys. So then you guys already know who the top 5 lenders are anyways. So if you need loan help, just email me or call me and I just send the list out to everyone. I do it every year. I put it together after I talk to the lenders because I already know all the lenders because most of them give me stuff to hand out during the presentations. So I already know what their rates are going to be. That being said, the lenders' rates come out in June for a reason. They come out in June because that's when the bills come out from the colleges. So you don't do any loans, by the way. The earliest you do a loan is in June after you get the bill from the college. That being said, we do have a newsletter from our organization that goes out every month. If you want the newsletter, very simple, just email me if you didn't already pre-register for the newsletter. Every month it goes out specifically by grade level. So if you want the newsletter, email me, tell me what grade your student is in, and I'll send you out the newsletter. We talk about admission stuff, financial aid stuff, testing stuff. We talk about everything in the newsletter. It just depends on which grade level you are. That's what dictates what letter you'll be receiving or newsletter you'll be receiving. That being said, let's talk scholarships. Now, there's 3 different types of scholarships out there. The first is the number 1 type scholarship you want, which is from the college. The colleges themselves, obviously, the scholarships are given out by the admissions office, so contact them for information about scholarships. When you're talking to the admissions office about scholarships about going into the college, you also want to ask them about a second type of scholarship they have at the colleges. It's typically known as scholarships for continuing students. What that means is there are colleges that will award your student additional scholarship consideration if they do well academically at the college. However, this is the tricky part. Many colleges that offer additional scholarship money when your student is in college is doing well academically, and by well, I mean 3.5 or higher out of a 4 scale. What they're going to ask you to do in many cases is complete an additional form. This additional form is typically like 5 questions. But if you don't do the additional form, you can't get the scholarship. University of Delaware has this as well. They've been amazing when it comes to students doing well academically. If you make the dean's list, UDel has typically offered more scholarship money. But to get that scholarship money, you must fill out the additional document. So even if you get a 4.0 or a 4-point scale, they're not going to give you the money. You have to do the extra document. Right now, you should be asking the colleges, do you have these type of scholarships if my student's in school doing well academically? Level number 2, private scholarships. The 2 you see on the screen right now, FastWeb and FinAid, are the 2 I like the most. Now, you obviously have Scholly, you have CapEx, you have Hunch, you have Gator, you have Raptor, you have College Board. I can go on for like half an hour. There's like 3 dozen of them. But the reality is the 2 that are the best are these 2 here because they've been around the longest. They're also free. You do not pay for scholarship searches. And the least competition scholarship is the one from the local high school level. Check with the guidance office and ask them, when is the scholarship list for the local scholarships going to come out? Because it's the least competition. The private scholarships, the online stuff, will have a lot of competition, unfortunately. That being said, here are our resources. For those wondering, we have 2 more slides and we're done, guys. And you guys can ask every question you want. I'll stick on to answer all your questions. For senior parents, the FAFSA form, that's where you fill it out. Senior parents should be the only parents going on the FAFSA site. There's no reason juniors and below should be going on there. There's not information on there you guys need. For College Board, everyone should be going on College Board. Seniors, juniors, freshmen. There's actually information about scholarships, grants, everything as early as 6th grade, by the way, especially for the 2 websites you see in the middle there. For scholarship searches, everyone always asks, when should we start? Are we too late? There isn't a too early. There isn't a too late. The scholarships is early for college as 6th grade all the way to PhD level. So you can always be on these websites looking for help. Also, the reason I have them on here again is because of the fact that you do not pay for scholarship searches. It's typically a scam, okay? That being said, we do have a YouTube channel. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, once again, you get notified of all the new videos we have coming out. I'm posting like 1 to 4 videos every week. I'm about a week late this week because once October 1st hits, it's insane, obviously for me, because of all the parents needing help with financial aid forms. But if you do follow us, we do a lot of good content on there. Also, if you watch our videos, it does help our organization. That being said, we do have a Facebook page. If you follow our Facebook page, you would be notified of the different scams that pop up, but also other things. We talk about admissions trends. We talk about new things happening, new programs, SAT, ACT, admissions, financial aid. We talk about everything on the Facebook page. That being said, here is our contact information. If you need help, if you have questions, on the screen is my actual cell phone number, which my wife thinks I'm out of my mind for having my cell phone number on there. But the easiest way to get a hold of me is actually text message, then email, then phone call. I answer my text messages typically every day, and I usually get somewhere between 150 to 200 text messages when I wake up in the morning. But the easiest way to get a hold of me is text message, because I go through my text messages first. Then I do my emails, then I do my phone calls. I have not answered my phone, to be honest with you, in 4 days. This is why I didn't realize that Rose was jumping on until literally 5 minutes before the presentation. So text message is the easiest way to get a hold of me. I don't know if you can actually see this. I have just in the last hour, I have 90 text messages, okay? So, but that's the only way really to reach me. If I answer the phone, it's typically by accident, to be honest with you. That being said, text message, email, phone call. Now I know there's a lot of parents on the phone, on the Zoom meeting here tonight. If you have questions, just ask away. I'm going to go into the question and answer section here, and I'm just going to go down the list here and just answer all the questions. Ask away. I will stay on as long as we need to answer everyone's question, okay? Let me see here. One of the questions is, most of the colleges have gone SAT, ACT optional. How does that affect us for financial aid? And the reality is it doesn't have much effect from a grant perspective. It really only has an effect on the scholarship side. So if some colleges elect to require that for the scholarship, I would definitely appeal that. And this is what I mean by appeal. Let's just say you call the admissions office and they say to you, based on your GPA, you would have been eligible for scholarship, but you don't have an SAT score. I would ask for an appeal. I would ask to speak to the director of admissions or an associate director of admissions based on the fact that I have a GPA requirement to be able to get the scholarship. Is there anything we can work out type of scenario? I'm always looking to negotiate, especially scholarship money, okay? Especially if I'm not getting it scenario. The question is, if I take the SATs, is it a plus? A lot of you guys have yes and no answers to your questions, by the way. And the answer is yes and no. Let me give you an example. If you're applying to a high, let's call it an Ivy League school, and you get an SAT score of a 1350 or 1400, if you send that SAT score into an Ivy League school, they're basically not going to look at it because it's SAT optional and you're nowhere near the median score. To give you an example, Harvard's median score is around a 1522, which doesn't even exist, but because everything's out of 10 points. But unless you're anywhere near that level, it doesn't make sense to send it. Now, if it's required by a scholarship, then yes, I would send it. Obviously, Harvard's not one of those scholarship scenarios I'm talking about, but it depends on the college you're applying to, okay? Let me go to the next question here. See, we answered that. Some of your questions are already answered, guys, so I'm just skipping over them. Good question. Do we need to fill out additional forms to be considered for scholarship money? And the answer is, once again, yes and no. Usually it's no. Most colleges that provide you scholarship money just look at your academics and either give it to you or they don't. Some colleges require additional paperwork. And let me give you an example. Villanova has a presidential scholarship that does require additional paperwork for that scholarship. And the reason they do that is because the scholarship for the presidential scholarship is typically only awarded to somewhere between 30 to 50 students. Now, obviously, they receive tens of thousands of applicants, so it's not easy to get that scholarship. However, the reason it's not easy to get is because the presidential scholarship is complete tuition paid. So the whole thing is paid. So in a sense, 99% of the time, no, you do not need to fill out more paperwork for scholarships, but like there is that 1%, like the Villanova scenario, or in some cases for honors programs, okay? Oh, what is the name of the form is the question that you should fill out to get access to your students' academics and finances at the college. It's called the FERPA form, F-E-R-P-A. If you go on our YouTube channel, we have, I think it's called the 7 most important forms to fill out, or the 5 most important forms to fill out. It explains why the FERPA, the HIPAA form, and a few other forms are very important to fill out when your student goes off to college. Good question. The question is, if we do all the equations, as far as the net price calculator, the expected family calculator, and everything else, do we have to check off, yes, we want financial need consideration for aid? You do not. So if you know, you fill out all the forms, all the calculators, and the calculators say you can pay, let's say, $100,000 towards college, and you know every college you're looking at costs 60, 70, 80,000, then you can check off, no, we're not looking for need. Then it's okay. Okay, we discussed this. We discussed the twins. We discussed this as well. Good question. If you have let me put it this way. Let me put the question this way so it's a broad question. This is for the survivorship question, by the way, for the person looking at the screen now. If you have some kind of a state planning process that you're doing and you're helping out your parent, so i.e. the student's grandparent, by kind of moving stuff into your name, so on and so forth, technically you're supposed to count these assets, but there is kind of a loophole to it. If this is a scenario you're asking about, as far as, I'm not saying loophole in a bad way, I'm saying loophole in a good way, by the way. Just send me an email explaining the asset and how it's being put into place, and then I can tell you kind of how I would handle it, okay? We discussed that. Here. Once again, the students, the international students who are asking the question, because I deal with a lot of you guys that have the dual citizenship. A lot of you guys have Canadian dual citizenship too, which is, especially dealing with the school, I deal with a lot of parents that have dual citizenship with Canada every year for some reason. But that being said, just reach out to me via email and just explain your situation. Because some of you guys are asking me about the dual citizenship stuff as far as filling out financial aid forms. And then yes, in many cases, you can obtain aid even if you're still in the process of getting the permanent resident. Just send me an email because I need to know where you are in those stages of getting the permanent resident. Now, obviously, with COVID, it screwed everything up because it delayed everything through the courts. But just essentially just email me your question and be more detailed about your situation. I can give you a better answer. Good question. Do the loans require you filling out the FAFSA form? And the answer is yes. Of the three loans, the state loan, the federal loan, and the private loans, the federal loans and the state loans require you doing the FAFSA before you can take out the parent loan or the NJ class loan. So the FAFSA is a requirement just for the loans. And by the way, I have a video on YouTube, 7 reasons why you do the FAFSA no matter what. You do not, good question, do I need to know all the colleges I'm applying to before I do the FAFSA? And the answer is no. If you know one college you're applying to, you can do the FAFSA. So you can add schools to the FAFSA later on, by the way. Just send me an email because I could be on here for 20 minutes explaining to you the difference between their acceptance or their process for admissions, between getting the senator's letter and all the rest of the stuff. It's more in depth. Getting the interview by the military officer, it's way more in depth. So just send me an email. Here. Thank you guys for appreciating the presentation. Will IEP affect financial aid? It's a good question. 99% no, but there is a 1% yes. And this is what I mean by the 1% yes. There are some colleges out there that actually have specific scholarships for students applying through IEP programs, like Arizona's SALT program, like Fairleigh Dickinson. I just forgot the name of it, and I used to work there. Fairleigh Dickinson does have a scholarship specifically if you're applying through an IEP scenario. So does Marist. Marist has a special student process when you're applying to the college. So yes, as I see here, or as I'm telling you guys here, there are certain schools that do have specific financial aid components, consideration as far as amounts of scholarships given based on an IEP. So yes, technically there are. That's it, yeah. The only question left is, do colleges have a look back? And the answer is technically yes, because when you fill out the FAFSA for this year, you're using 2019 taxes for the school year 21-22. So technically it's 3 years in the past. But other than that, thank you guys once again for tuning in. Oh, we got more questions coming in. You can fill out the FAFSA form, by the way, before you do your admissions paperwork. I usually suggest doing it the other way because it makes more sense. It's kind of like putting the cart before the horse, but this year is tricky because schools are all moving up their deadlines for financial aid while moving forward their deadlines for admissions. Colleges, by the way, will not ask for bank statements or brokerage accounts. It's on the honor system when you give them the assets. That's the way it works. And what I mean by honor system is they check your taxes, your interest, your dividends, line 2B, line 3B, your additional income line, which is line 7, your capital gains, line 6. These are all like the red flags, I guess you can call, to kind of see if you're being honest as far as on the honor system about checking savings, investments type scenario. Okay. Other than that, I think we're good. Looks like, I think we're good. I think we are good to go. Yes, we talked on all those subjects. All right. I'd like to thank Rose for helping out, providing it for some of the parents that needed Rose to step in here. I know some of the parents asked for this. Sorry, guys, it took us a little bit longer to kind of set this up. But once again, this is being recorded. So I will be sending everyone a copy of this that needs it and wants it. Okay. Good question. Do colleges have interpreters for deaf students? And the answer is yes. If you have any kind of scenario where you need specific help, the colleges can provide it, whether it's somebody writing notes, whether it's or basically somebody taking notes, I guess you can call it, or dictation of these kind of things. The colleges do have these services. So yes, I would ask the admissions officers of all the colleges you're considering going to, and many of them, I would be surprised if even one of them says they don't have this available, because almost all of them do at this point, okay? Other than that, thank you guys. I'd like to thank the guidance officers for having us here tonight. I'd like to thank Rose for being on here as well. I know it's been a long night. Other than that, thank you guys. I appreciate it.